Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining me tonight on this rainy night. You may be viewing this live, or hopefully you'll come back to it and see this recording to learn more about Dual Language 101. So my name is Monique Reese. I'm the principal here at HDLA. I'll tell you a little more about myself as we go forward in our presentation. You could be a prospective parent. You may be an existing HDLA parent. You could be a parent from out of Hollister who just wants to learn more about dual language, and I welcome you to learn more about it with me tonight. So the story about our school here is that, as you know, we're in a rural agricultural community with a deep Mexican-American heritage. The thing that's interesting to me about the success of HDLA and the demand in the community for our program is that most of the dual language schools that I am familiar with are in cities, bigger cities. And what's interesting about HDLA is that many of the families who are a part of our community have grandparents, the children or great-grandparents who came to this area of the state of California to work in the fields, and some of whom even walked with Cesar Chavez and today work with the industry of agriculture that's so much a part of our state. Yet the Mexican-American heritage, although they may have many aspects of it, some of these families have lost their Spanish over the years. And so we have a tremendous community of folks that maybe learned Spanish when they were little, or their parents spoke it, but they never learned it, and they want their children to have something different. So that's what's really neat about HDLA, that there are deep roots and we come from a beautiful heritage. About 14, 15 years ago, the superintendent at the time was very interested in dual language, along with a group of pioneering parents who came together and worked with principal and some core founding teachers to research and develop and start HDLA. Nobody to my knowledge, no one had ever been taught or had their child go to a dual language school, but they heard about it, they knew it was special, and they wanted this for Hollister, for our community. And so after a year of planning and much hard work, the principal and the two grade levels, two kinder classes and two first grade classes, started HDLA in 2007-2008 school year. At that point, the 50-50 model, which we'll go into tonight, was selected probably for more political reasons than the research behind. I think it seemed to make more sense for most people to say, hey, well, even English and Spanish, that sounds fair, let's do that. I'm sure there was more to it than that, but in most people's minds, having both languages is, it does make sense. And we've been one of the few, well, I shouldn't say few, but our program here at HDLA is one of the most successful 50-50 programs that I know of. Then my knowledge is pretty wide, and I'll tell you about that a little bit. So that's the celebration of HDLA. You know, if you know our community, that we have a good reputation for doing a good job with learning and teaching and community here. But I needed you to know those things because that's important to know where we come from and as we go forward. Today we're TK through 8 school. We have 2 TK classes and 4 across from kinder all the way up through 6th grade. And each year we have 2 more years until we're fully implemented at 4 grade levels across for the full implementation. We are still growing, and it's exciting. We're still having lotteries. We're still getting more demand than we can actually have spots for students. Our community is approximately 90% Hispanic, 6% plus some other mixes in of different ethnicities, and 68% free and reduced lunch. That kind of varies year to year, but it's about like that still. So the 50-50 program works like this. In TK through kinder, we have all subjects are taught in both languages approximately 50% of the day. And sometimes it's 48, sometimes 52, but as close to get to the 50 as we can get. And This middle school functions a little bit differently. In 6th and 7th grade, we have English language arts in English and history in English, and science and Common Core math are in Spanish. In 8th grade, we are preparing the students to transition to high school, and so we give them their core English language arts and math or algebra in English, and their science and social studies are in Spanish. We have electives, Spanish language development for those who are learning Spanish as their second language, English language development. We have a big push to try to redesignate or call proficient by the legal definition of the state and federal guidelines. Our English learners redesignate as proficient, usually before middle school, but we try to get everybody redesignated before they go in high school. Our leadership class could be in English or Spanish, depending on the cycle that we were in. And PE and music vary depending on the language abilities of the teachers. Way back in 2006, as well as today, we follow the Center for Applied Linguistics criteria for successful dual language programs. And I refer to them throughout this talk tonight. But basically, generally speaking, a school would have high standards, that the instruction would be developmental, meaning that we use appropriate language acquisition developmental periods. So we don't expect everybody to know the language within 6 months, that we understand language acquisition and we plan accordingly, and that also certain academic skills, reading and other things, are developmental and grow over time. So we recognize those and support those in our planning and our language learning. Strong leadership is key. Way back when we started this school, there were leaders in the district and here at the school site that believed in this idea of a dual language program for students. And so they supported it and have all the way through to our current superintendent. When it was time to find a new principal about 8 years ago, they found me. I've been here for 8 years, and my background is almost 29 years in dual language, in and out, having been a mom of a dual language student, having been a teacher, having been a coordinator, principal, founder of school. And so I also worked in the state of Texas with dual language schools all over the state, and I saw some amazing programs. And so I've had a lot of experience in a lot of different schools, getting to know how dual language works, the research behind it, and seen as a true testimony to how wonderful it is, not only as a professional career, but as a mom. I can attest to the wonderful gifts of what a dual language community can give to a child. My son is special, and not just because of us, because he had a wonderful school to start out with, like your students have with your children. We really appreciate also the leadership of our teachers and the strength of having some of our founding teachers are still here, and also that we've picked up wonderful teachers along the way over these years, and each one is a leader in their own right. If you know HDLA, if you don't know HDLA, but you would know us quickly by our community. Obviously, right now we're in distance learning, and our community is like everything else is fractured and we're separate. But we really, one of the most beautiful things about our school and many dual language schools, I'd say most dual language schools, is that there is a community there are like-minded people that come together seeking something unique for their children. It doesn't matter if you are a farm worker, if you're a middle-class person, if you're a millionaire, it doesn't matter where you come from. We all have a similar hope for our children, and that is that they have a unique experience in their education. Some people aren't interested, that's fine. We have wonderful schools everywhere, especially in Hollister. But those seeking a dual language education for their child are usually pretty well versed, and they know what they're looking for, and they're looking for a community, challenges for their child, and of course the benefit of becoming bilingual. So we can't do what we do around here without parents, and you'll see some of their slides in a moment about how we do that. So the beginning of our story was anchored in research, and we continue to do that. In the beginning, like I said, we only had the research to go on, and we looked at all different models, and it was decided upon this 50-50 model. And we used in some of the things that, if you know HDLA, or if you haven't yet got to know us, you'll see when you come here. And this is all based, my presentation tonight is basically addressing what a regular in-person school life would be. And we'll address a couple of things about distance learning, but mostly what I'm addressing is in the hope that we go back soon and that we come back all healthy and unrestricted in our activities and our daily life, as we have been in this last year almost. But you'd see things like mirroring. That means the classes are very, you have two different teachers, and those classes are set up, and your child sits with another student in the same desk, in the same setup, in the same part of the classroom, that the teachers decorate their rooms, and work is displayed on the same side, and calendars and other things that we look for and find to function the classroom, the TV, the monitor, the cameras, all of that is organized by the two teachers to be very, very similar. So that helps the children when they switch classes in that 50-50 model, which we'll learn more about. That keeps them less distracted. They can flow right into their second class without too much confusion. There are target teachers. The target language in our school is Spanish. When we call it a target language from, I guess, the research of, like, there can be different target languages in different communities: Portuguese, French, Vietnamese, Mandarin, German. Depends on the part of the country. What's required in a two-way dual language school, immersion school, is to have enough of the foundational, the target language native speakers in order to support the language learning of the other side. Of course, we're an English speaking country, and in this community we speak English. We also speak a lot of Spanish, particularly in our area right here, but that's an essential part of how dual language works, is having enough of the native speakers that help teach the language learners, and vice versa. So the English learners who are learning English have work side by side and learn side by side native English speakers. So we want that children to have equal access to both languages. So that means they're going to have that experience of those languages every day. Generally speaking, in a moment, I'll show you another slide, 50% of their day is in one language, and then 50 is in the other. And it'll alternate depending on the week and the cycle of rotation that they're on. Parents have been an integral part of our school from the beginning, not just for kindergarten and typical grade levels where parents are involved. They range all the way from TK all the way to 8th grade. And parents plan their kindergarten promotion all the way to the 8th grade promotion. It's their celebration, and we support them and do everything we can to help organize. But parents have always been a big part of our celebration and a big part of our community, and we need them. We need them so much. We also decided a few years back, or some years back, to extend our program through 8th grade in order to support the language learning that the children had already achieved up until 5th grade or 6th grade. And so we were allowed by the district to expand to 7th and 8th. And we see tremendous results. The research would say that language learning takes 5 to 7 years. Most researchers now say 7 years to become completely proficient. Well, guess what? If they start in kinder, by 7th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade is when they're coming into their strong second language. So we have kids redesignating in middle school. We have our Spanish learners being able to totally function in high level academic settings in their second language. We always make decisions based on what does the research say and how can we do what's best for kids. Right now, I'll give you an example. We're in a season with this distance learning. We never expected it to last as long as it has, like none of us have. And so we are looking currently at the model that we chose for our distance learning, which is one whole week in one language and one whole week in the other language. And what we're finding is, and what we're seeing, which the research would support, is that students without daily exposure to the second language are struggling, and they're finding it more and more difficult to understand the work that they're doing. So this is mostly for the younger students, I would say. But so right now we're in a process of looking at how can we modify our schedule, our distance learning schedule, and what will that look like when we come back. Also, all the research that we're taking in right now is how can we keep students safe? How is this safe for the teachers? How is this going to function, of course, toward our language goals and the research behind that? So many things to take into account. Of course, we're also very much anchored in the reading research and all the different subject matter. We have high academic expectations, and our results generally show that. Of course, this last year we did not have state testing. We hope to have it this year, and we're not sure what it'll show because of this big change we've had, but we do have high academic expectations. And what we've learned and what the research says is that dual language works for everyone. Kids with learning differences, kids with IEPs, kids with autism spectrum disorder, different language levels. That's not to say that once in a while we come up against a kiddo that really doesn't like learning language, that's resistant, and sometimes their parents end up choosing a different environment, an English only environment for them, and that's okay. But I would say, this isn't a research point, but in my experience, I'd say 1 out of 100 kids, maybe 1 out of 200 every year, we come up with a decision, or we don't come up with, the parents and we come together and try to figure out what's the best thing for a student. Sometimes it doesn't click for them, but most kids will do very well. In fact, usually is an example of my own son, who's now 29 years old. He had a learning difference that was identified through an IEP and educational testing when he was in 6th grade. And the results were quite dramatic, and the specialist told me that he was going to have terrible difficulties and things would be really hard for him. And it hadn't been that hard for him as a younger student, but I truly believe that he overcame a lot of the challenges that he has with that learning disability because he was in a dual language school that had teachers that were amazing and supportive and creative and taught him so well. The last thing is, I'll show you in a moment, the instructional strategies and the model. This is all based in our research. So here we go. Best practices for dual language. You'll see that there are the whole long list. Big, huge part of our community and our culture here is the consistent and collaborative planning. Teachers are checking in with each other midday. They're checking in with each other every day. They do deep planning at least once a week. The model of 50-50 requires that we separate the two languages. And in fact, in any dual language school, you would find that when you are learning in English, we only speak English in that class. The students are encouraged to only speak English. The work is all in English. The print in the classroom is English. When you're in your Spanish class, you're speaking Spanish, you don't break the code. The teacher doesn't translate, or in either language, we don't translate for the children. We do everything to help them understand. But that separation of language is literal separation in 2 different classrooms, but also separation of, my students know me as a Spanish speaker. When I was teaching 1st grade, the last day, the last hour of school, I would speak English with my little ones, and they were always flabbergasted. They did not believe that I could speak English all that time. The reason we do that is because it helps. So if I'm a little one and I know my teacher will understand, I can get my teacher to tell me something, what's the easiest way is in English. If I'm an English speaker, I'm going to wait and hold out for a really long time. And we've learned, and they've documented, that if the kids know you can speak their language, they'll wait forever. So it's kind of like a secret that we keep from the kids in the beginning. Of course, as they develop as bilingual individuals, they learn, oh, their teachers know both languages, but it's kind of fun because it really works. If they know and they're feeling like they must speak the language to communicate with the teacher, they must try to understand, at least in the beginning. They do. That's really neat. We use integrated thematic instruction. So we use the main curriculum that we have from Benchmark, Advance, or Adelante, and we enhance that with different themes, and we bring those themes. That means that those kids can make connections. I'll show you a couple of photos in a moment. We use sheltered instruction strategies. What that means is I'm going to do a lot of things to help you understand what I'm saying. You won't understand the words, and again, I'll show you. I'm going to do a little presentation called Rio, and you'll see how that works as well. There's a lot of visual print around the children. Some classrooms, they actually label a window, you know, ventana, mesa, whatever is in the room, it gets labeled, and lots of visuals, pictures. Teachers draw, they bring, now again, with the technology, we can bring up photos and videos and use realia, real things and manipulatives for the students to make the abstract nature of language work in a physical, you know, something tangible that they can hold on to. We have a balanced literacy program where we have a strong phonics base and interventions in sequential and systematic phonics. And also, of course, small group reading where we learn to think, and after we decode, become more fluent. And so we're really working hard on getting our balanced literacy program stronger every year. We do extensive cooperative learning. Cooperative learning, so language learning is social, just like we talk to our babies and how our babies learn language. We talk to them way before they can talk back to us. And then we reinforce that language, and we praise them, and we love them, and they feel safe. And that's where language grows in a first language setting. Well, the same as in a second language setting. If we are creating a safe environment where other friends are learning and work together, and that cooperation between a student who's a Spanish speaker and a bilingual student, or a bilingual student with an English, starting out as an English only or Spanish only, those relationships are key to the success of our program. Small groups are a way for the teachers to assess and see what do they need, and what do they learn, and what do I have to do differently tomorrow for my lesson. So every time a teacher meets with a student, she's assessing in her mind, if not, you know, in notes and other kinds of assessments to keep track and work with the students to make sure that ensure that they've learned what the plan is. And that assessment, as I mentioned at the bottom, it's also systematic and ongoing with the district. So we have district assessments we do several times a year, common assessments. And then we also have, for older grades, state assessments in a normal time. We didn't have it last year, but we'll probably have it this year, where we get measured against all the other kids in California and all the other kids in the country to see how our kids are faring in their academics. Oops. This slide doesn't want to go. There we go. We also have extensive professional development for our teachers. All the new teachers attend a dual language training, and in the past we've been able to go to conferences, and we hope to do that again soon. Our county Office of Ed provides many interesting professional development opportunities. We have district-wide trainings in all the subjects: reading, math, science, and technology. We do that in social studies every year. There's kind of a different focus. Last June, we had a tremendous training in technology that our Ed Services Director created, and it was essential for the success that we've had in our distance learning this fall. So we're grateful for that. We also have a program called Capturing Kids' Hearts, and Capturing Kids' Hearts is a social, emotional, community building, relational community program that we've all been trained in. And then we have different things. If you're a student's already here, you might know about good things and affirmations. And there's a whole beautiful idea behind Capturing Kids' Hearts, which is if you have their hearts, you'll have their mind. So we know that they need safety, they need affection, they need that community in order to blossom here. And we see that, and it's actually coming along after 4 years or 5 years now. We've really seen a lot of it blossoming this last year, despite our situation in distance learning. We've also had an opportunity to be Google certified as teachers, and also the county's supporting that this year, where teachers have developed their skills, and thank goodness, because we've needed it in distance learning. Project GLAD is guided language acquisition design, and that's a program that we were just trained in the past, and I would really like to bring it back again in the near future. Thinking maps are way of organized comprehension, and we'll see an example of that in a photo coming up. And then professional learning communities are when teachers get together and as professionals look at the work, look at the data, and decide what kind of adjustments and kind of directions they need to take in order to be more successful with the students. We recruit and retain high quality dual language staff. So as much as possible, we hire fully bilingual native speaking teachers. We have been lucky in the last few years to find many young people who have come to HDLA and want basically to be a part of a program that they never had, and they might even be from Hollister, or their parents, they're young teachers who are Spanish speaking. They want their children to be bilingual, and so they bring their own students. It's a beautiful thing that many of our staff have children, nieces, nephews, grandchildren with us here at our school. And sometimes we even go across the world, and we've had 5 or 6 wonderful teachers from Spain and Mexico who come with high-level language abilities, and who are amazing, especially at the upper grades, who are really able to provide a different model, a different accent, a different, since their language is highly developed in academic language, they have great success with our older students as well, young and old. The curriculum we use so part of the guiding principles of a dual language education is that we have a process for developing and revising curriculum. So that means we're looking at different projects and able to integrate and use both developed curriculum as well as the standard curriculum. So on the first slide on the left, you see it, a GLAD poster of students, an observation chart, and this is for their study of habitats. And so they write their observations of what they see, and it looks like a lot of different habitats there. It looks like desert and plains and tropical. And so they write what they see, and that becomes, the poster becomes a reference for them as they move forward in their learning about habitats. The language, the vocabulary, the teacher, and some other pieces I'll show you they become resources for them as they write and they build understanding. So on the second slide, you see 2 girls using the curriculum from Benchmark. It's the reading curriculum. It's what we call consumable, meaning that every student has their own copy and they can mark it up and they read. And in this case, these girls are making a thinking map, which means that they have to identify, usually a prompt from the teacher, identify characters or setting or problem solving, different parts of the literature, or sometimes it's content area, so it's science or history related. And those girls are using that tool that they've been taught ever since they were little in kindergarten. This is probably about a 4th grade, 3rd or 4th grade lesson. And they're using it to organize their thoughts. And then again, in middle school, we effectively integrate technology to deepen and enhance learning. So even though we're all online right now, in better days, we've had it as a tool rather than a format. And again, the kids do research, and now more than ever, they'll be very savvy to come back and use technology. We also always want to have a continuous program planning and evaluation and implementation cycle. And we have 3, well, there's many more, but 3 basic tools that we use. One is the innovation team. On the left, you'll see that those are ideas and things we've identified that we want to work through in this team, and some of them we can't take on everything, but some of our biggest changes and have been organized starting out in that way. And then we go into a cycle of, we look at our data and we set goals, and we plan the lessons, and we give the lessons, and we assess whether they learned it, and we reflect on the results and adjust our learning, and then set new goals. So that's pretty much the cycle of learning and teaching and learning that we have in most every school in our district, of course, in most schools everywhere, but we've really honed it, and we feel strongly about that. The last one is we meet every week. The teachers have had in the past 2 hours a week of release time plus an early day. This is different, of course, in distance learning, but where we really look at what is it that what do we need to focus on? How are we all working together? We have something called collective efficacy, which means that everyone's working together for the greater good of all of the students. And so we find that you can't do that without those meetings and that professional learning community. Our instruction is student-centered. So there are lots of, you see on the first slide on the left, where that's called, oh man, I forget the name of it. It's like a little box that there are clues, and the teacher sets up an activity, and there are little things that they get to open up at the end if they get all the clues, and they undo the combination. And then students work together in cooperative learning and cooperative projects. And they're also working with the teacher in independent learning as well. So you see these little ones on the right are in a reading group with their teacher and answering questions, while the other students are working independently on other activities. We, of course, now with our technology world, this was before this slides came from, before, when in a world that it was a tool rather than a vehicle for instruction. On the left, you see that actually on there's a little, that guy in the picture is undoing the combination from the box from the previous slide, and everyone can watch it and see how it's working and if it's going to open. So that's just a fun, a fun engagement activity that gets the students really motivated to solve the problems and think. They learn and they use their technology to document, to write, to research. And teachers use different tools. For instance, the Google Classroom is where everybody is learning right now. And then Kahoots are like little quizzes and games, kind of a game showy thing. And same thing with Edmodo, another type of interactive way to engage students in their learning. Those of you who are already HDLA families, or those coming in, one of the things we talked about at the orientation, and something that we kind of take for granted after a while, but each class, you should know that each class is balanced for language. Again, it's a research piece where we know that if we have 1/3 English learners, 1/3 bilingual students, and 1/3 Spanish learners, that combination, as much as literally possible, we balance. So for instance, on the lottery that we hold, that those numbers come from different categories. So we'll have so many spots for English learners, so many spots for bilingual, and so many spots for Spanish learners. And it's very important. And that's why we have a lot of people that feel left out when they don't get in, because we only have a certain number of spots, and we have to maintain that language balance, or else the program doesn't work. And I spoke earlier about the separation of languages. Each target teacher, and the English teacher and the Spanish teacher have everything in each classroom completely dedicated to that language. However, the material and everything that the children are learning, it's the same lesson. Mostly, a few of the language arts lessons are different, literature and Spanish, but for the most part, their English books and their Spanish books are very much the same. Here they are in a regular mini. A couple years ago, when the kids were switching rooms from one to the other, they were, I think this is 3rd grade class, and they're moving from one class to the other in the middle of the day for their 50-50 language break. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about bridging. So bridging is something that HDLA has developed very well, and it's quite unusual in the sense that many dual language schools don't have this. And the reason they don't have it, in some cases, in many cases, it's because it's really hard to do. What bridging is that the students are in two groups in a cohort, 25 kids in one class and 25 in the other. And they share the same two teachers. But that group stays together and goes to a lesson. They each go to a lesson in the morning. Some weeks they start in English and some weeks they start in Spanish. They have the same lesson. The teachers are giving them the same lesson on that day. And then in the afternoon, or 11:30 or whatever the midday point is, they switch to the other language. And the reason why bridging is so important is because in the morning they've had a lesson or a skill development issue, and they might not understand everything. It doesn't matter which language. English learners are going to struggle more in English class, and Spanish learners are going to struggle more in Spanish class. But when they go to their partner, their other class, their second language class, they're going to get a review, an extension activity, some practice, some discussion that links the learning from their morning lesson to the other language in their afternoon lessons. And so that is called bridging. When instruction is bridged, that means that every day they have a chance to really connect in both languages the learning of the day. And it in some cases, the language or like for instance, in a literature story, some of them are authentic literature that's written in Spanish that we don't have a perfect translation for in English. So sometimes there might be two different stories, but in those two different stories, they might be learning about character development. So they'll be reading the story and talking about the characters and the setting and so on. But they'll have that connection. So they learn what the vocabulary is for a mathematical issue or for a comprehension situation or a story setting. And then they go and they talk about it in the other language and they learn that vocabulary as well. Just as a definition, bridging is when two languages are brought together, guiding students to analyze and contrast the languages and transfer the content learned in one to the other. So one of the things you need to know about how dual language works, the most important key thing is when we learn something in whatever language we learn it in, if we've really learned it, we don't have to learn it again. We might need the vocabulary words. We might need the language itself. For instance, if I learned to read in English, and as a 17-year-old, I went to live in Brazil, I didn't need to learn how to read or think or do math again in Brazil. I needed to learn the vocabulary and I learned the language in order to communicate the things that I already knew. I needed to attach the new vocabulary to concepts that I already had in my mind. Well, transfer is when basically you don't have to have, it goes both ways. I learned things in Portuguese when I was living in Brazil that I was able to bring back to my life here in the States when I came back from living there. And so the transfer goes between both languages both ways. So we don't have to relearn, like addition is a simple one for a little guy, like a first grader, you're learning addition. Once you learn how those numbers come together and form another number, you might need the vocabulary to talk about it, but you know how it works. And that's what's so wonderful is we don't have to learn everything all over again. We just have to learn the language that goes along with the things. So our program also teaches in high academic standards that are very important for, we expect a lot. So we don't like water it down, but we support the students as we go forward. And I'm going to have to talk about it fast because we're going fast. We're going long here. Bridging allows students to connect the content area from one language to another. So here are just two examples of one ecosystem habitat, I think, poster done in one class in Spanish and another one done in the other class in English. You'll see that a lot of the vocabulary, you'll see ecosistema and ecosystem, you'll see dieta and diet. And also a lot of these words are cognates that sound very similar. That's basically how the connection gets made. So everybody got the poster. They got it in the morning. They created it over several days in the morning, and then they'd go to their next class in the afternoon and be working on some of those concepts that using that vocabulary in their second language. All right, I'm going to do an activity right now. Excuse me, I'm going to tickle those. I'm going to read you I'm going to read you something in Portuguese. And I need to read it because I lived in Rio many years ago and my Portuguese is still in there, but it's not as fluent as it used to be. And I'm going to show you what not to do. And then I'm going to show you how much easier it is when I shelter the language for you. And you're going to see how the children learn things. And forgive me, it's a little awkward on the camera because I'm not set up to stand up and do different angles and such, but I think you'll get the point. Rio, o filme. Rio é uma animação que conta a história da rara domesticada Blue, que nunca aprendeu a voar. E tem uma vida tranquila na pequena cidade de Moose Lake, Minnesota, até que chegou ao Rio de Janeiro para uma emocionante aventura, que inclui cenas das praias cariocas, da Floresta da Tijuca, o Cristo Redentor, Pão de Açúcar e até do Carnaval. All right, now if you speak Portuguese, you probably understood everything I said. If you speak Spanish, you might have understood much of what I said, some of what I said. If you don't speak either one, you might have understood very little of what I said, maybe a couple words like Moose Lake, Minnesota, or Rio de Janeiro. So now I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to try to shelter the language, and I'm not going to exactly read everything again, but I'm going to give you some more support in your understanding. Okay, Rio. Rio de Janeiro. Rio de Janeiro é uma cidade grande, Rio de Janeiro. Este filme conta da história de uma rara, seu nome é Blue. A rara seu nome é Blue. Arara, dime, arara, repite, arara. Muito bem. Agora, Blue tem uma vida tranquila em uma cidade, Moose Lake, Minnesota. E vai de Moose Lake, Minnesota, ao Rio de Janeiro. O problema é que não sabe voar. Não sabe voar. Blue não pode voar. A praia, e no filme, há praias com água, areia, a praia de Copacabana, praia, time praia. Muito bom. Floresta, é uma floresta, há muitas árvores. A Floresta da Tijuca tem muitas árvores. Cascata, uma cascata na Floresta da Tijuca. A Floresta da Tijuca é uma floresta, uma selva tropical. Cascata de água. O Cristo Redentor e o Pão de Açúcar. Em Rio de Janeiro. Okay, so sorry, that would have been a little better in person, but I think you get the point. I want you to think about what you understood of the first reading, if you understood anything. And in the chat, if you can chat on your device, right? One of the things that made it possible to understand more of the second reading, and I didn't read the whole thing, I probably should have exactly, but I think you get the point. The things that I talked about or that I tried to show you were important. So you can go ahead and chat, put those in the chat while we continue. And we'll talk about them in a little bit. So GLAD strategies and thinking maps are two things that I mentioned, and there's some more. There are different strategies that you'll see and the way that we help the kids learn to organize their thinking. And then we post those in the room, and those help the students refer to and understand. So if I had been talking about this film in my classroom, I would have had pictures of and labeled pictures of Arara, seu nome é Blue. And I would write that, it would be on the board. So the children, if they were writing a story, writing about it, they could go and refer to it. In our community, in the past, we've had this as a tool, teaching strategies checklist, and they're from the dual language best practices, and basically they're different areas of, and this is just a shot of the front page of it, but there are many, many things that we can do to help support language learners. And this is something that teachers can use with one another. I don't use it as an evaluation tool, but it's a way for us to like think about what else could I be doing to help my students learn. One important part of our place to grow in our school is that we have a goal of multicultural competence, and global competence is kind of a step up from that. And basically it's the acquisition of in-depth knowledge and understanding of international issues and appreciation and ability to learn with people from diverse linguistic and cultural backgrounds. Never in my life have I ever seen the need for that more as I have in the last year of our world. Understanding differences and not being threatened by them, understanding the way that this can get us into trouble and can hurt us. These are things that we need to learn about. So if we see something in common with a people, with a culture, that's a strength. And if we see a difference, it's a beautiful thing to understand about them that's different from us, but it doesn't mean it's bad or that we're better or that they're better. It just means that we have a level of understanding of other cultures. So that's something we're still working on developing at a higher level. We do it, but I'd like to get deeper as we go forward in the next few years. So how do we do that? We have focus studies. One of them, and I have a couple of slides to show you of our Dia de los Muertos. We do a way of honoring our loved ones, as well as a cultural study for the way that tradition reflects family and ancestry and spiritual life. It's not a spiritual practice, but it's an understanding that other people maybe have different ways of honoring and believing than we do. We have celebrations like Chinese New Year, where we have parades and we learn a little bit about the Chinese New Year connection, or excuse me, the culture and understand a little more about how different that culture celebrates and believes in New Year. And International Week every year, every grade level studies a different country, and they create some sort of a performance, culminating performance that they share with families. And so this was a second grade class some years ago who were celebrating Brazil, happened to be celebrating Brazil in a samba kind of a dance. And they're, excuse me, they're dancing and having learned much more than just a dance about the country and the music and the food and the beauty of that country. Another area that we are dealing with, and we try as we go forward, and we still are not all the way there yet, but is the idea, the concept of equity, in the sense that not everyone needs the same things. And so how are we going to be able to give equitable support to everyone for whatever they need? Some of our students need English support, some need Spanish, some need reading, some need math, some need behavior support, social, emotional. And so the thing is that we're trying to is giving what everyone specifically needs. So it's not the same thing. Not everybody will get reading intervention. Not everybody will get a behavior intervention, but those who do need it, we strive to give them what they need. Eventually, we want to remove the barriers that cause things to be more difficult. Removing those barriers. And I think our country is in that place right now. What kind of systemic barriers do we think about and hear about on the news every day? Political division, political, thinking, racial issues, socioeconomic. We have many systemic barriers that the world is working on. And so it's our job here, and what we strive to do in our dual language program is be aware of those and try to address them and receive the feedback if we're not aware of it, to be moving better, to be able to change the world a little bit for our kids. Equity is, again, it's about seeing other cultures and participating in our learning about our differences and similarities. This is another example of parent participation, that the children did all these artesanías, these crafts for the Dia de los Muertos Museo. And then the parents put it together in our library every year, and it's very beautiful. We also try to have field trips for the kids, because we know that not everyone's family is going to be able to take them to the same places and give them the same experiences, and we want them to have those experiences. And so we strive on a regular, of course, in a regular world, to be able to do that. And you see lots of parents here. We need our parents to help take us to those wonderful places. We have multi-tiered systems of support, which are the small group interventions the teachers have every day. We have a power hour intervention, and the intervention teachers come in and work with a daily, for those students who need it, an Orton Gillingham systematic phonics program. And the children are learning to recognize the way that those words come together in the complex world of English, in our English language. And we also have a Spanish version for students who are struggling as well. We have a program district-wide for TK through third grade called Footsteps to Brilliance, and that's a program that you may be familiar with if you're in the district already. It's a reading intervention practice, array of different activities for students. It plugs you into your reading level and takes you through the lessons, and hopefully by the end you're already a fluent reader and things are taken with your, so we require the students to use it 20 minutes a day, 7 days a week. And if that all doesn't come together, and the interventions, the teachers, the interventions, and the footsteps, we have a student study team process that helps our students identify our students' needs and try different things before we look at other alternative assessments. So our families are required. How do we require you? We can't police it. We don't want to, but we want you to be inspired to volunteer 30 hours per year. And that could be work at home. It could be planning work for different events. It could be on site on the weekends. It could be in the classrooms. It could be a lot of different ways. So once we get back to normal, can't wait to see our families back and volunteering, because they make the huge difference. So again, what is the core of our program? It's a responsive infrastructure for positive relationships. On the first slide on the left, you see family moms doing a fundraiser for 6th grade science camp, painting faces on the Day of the Dead celebration day, and for $1 a piece. And then we paint everybody's face who wants it. Then you see on the second slide, students who have been, this is of course all pre-COVID, the parents create lessons, or they don't create the lessons, they actually facilitate and give the lessons along with student leaders, the harvest of the month. And that is a program we've had for many years, along with the agricultural community that donate the fruits and vegetables that we use in those presentations. And we have some special community partnerships. A few years ago with the mayor, I helped facilitate a Casitas Homeless project, where the kids met and talked about the homeless situation. We went up to San Jose and met with another school community and talked about what we could do to support the homeless folks in Hollister. So that was a really interesting learning and social experiment that was very helpful. We always have a new family orientation before you come, and most of you have probably already been to that, and it's pretty straightforward. You already, I also recorded it, so if you haven't seen that, you could go back and see that new family orientation. It's on the district website. So how can you help your child be successful? And I only have a few more minutes. I'm going to go through this pretty fast. There are things that you should already know and understand, but just know that it makes a huge difference. The families whose children are successful do these things I'm about to share. Probably the biggest point that I need to tell you is that except that you're enrolled in the program too. So what does that mean? That means that you choosing an alternative program requires some extra participation and some going out of your box of life into finding solutions and support. Don't be frustrated when things are hard for your child. Believe in what we say. We've been around the block. We've had our kids in this program. We've taught it for many years. We know it's hard, and we also want to support you with that, but don't question, don't second guess yourself. Your child will blossom, and we will support you and your child all along the way. Please volunteer, get involved. Your support and your attendance at school functions is essential. It's really hard because the small group of parents tends to do everything. And a lot of the people who are supposed to volunteer their 30 hours never show up, or I don't say never, but often don't participate as much. We need everyone. Pass notes. What does that mean? That means that when your child's teacher will not address you in English or Spanish, you need to write a note to your teacher, send an email, respond in class tag. Understand that there are certain restrictions. Every year I have some parents that are like, well, he won't speak to me. And like, I don't understand. And they probably weren't listening at the orientation. They probably haven't had this presentation, which is great. We're going to have it now. Just understand that it's the teachers holding the separation of language is very precious and will only speak to you in the target language. Sometimes other folks can be around. Sometimes you just write a note. Sometimes you hide behind your face if it's a real emergency type of thing, or you make a phone call later or an email. So just remember that it's really important. And always encourage your child. In the beginning, your child is going to be like, wow, this lady's talking to me and I don't understand what she's saying. And know that there's a growing pain in the very beginning. And yet the sooner they learn that and they feel the support from you, there's research that shows that a parent who is at the best school in the world, who doesn't like the school program, the child is not going to do as well, even though it's the best school in the world. And there are other schools that aren't that great, but if the parents support and think the children blossom. So you have so much power in taking your child with the benefits of our school and this type of choice that you've made. Just like a lot of choices you make for your child, you might choose what church or synagogue to attend. That's not what they might pick later in their life, but you as an adult in their life make this decision for dual language at this point. And I can tell you, there is not one person in our community, maybe out of our community, but nobody that I know of who ever regrets having their child come to our school. Sometimes they feel sad because their child doesn't, there's some behaviors and some things that make it hard for them to be successful. And then they choose to switch out to English only, but those people are the exception and not the rule. How can you help your child? Again, it's always number one, read with them and to them in whichever language you prefer. It doesn't have to be Spanish or English. Every word that your child hears before coming to school will make a huge difference in their successfully learning to read. You want to encourage the curiosity. If they don't understand something, work with that and be okay with being curious and not having all the answers quite yet. Applaud them and support them in how hard it is. In the beginning years, the kids come home and they're just conked out. I remember when I lived in Brazil, in the first few months, I was exhausted because when you don't know a language, you use all your brain to try to figure things out. And yet little by little, it gets easier and easier. Get some study skills organized. You want to create an environment for them to be successful, and the earlier the better. And I know we're all on that for distance learning, but when we're not on distance learning, we still need that those skills and that space. Again, be involved, create cultural experiences, go to when we can, go to the parades or the events or the museums or different things that you can immerse your child in different types of experiences. And you always want to keep your communication with the teachers going. When you're doing homework or practicing words or reading, make it fun. One of the things that's fun about being a teacher with littler guys is you can be as goofy as you want, and you can use all sorts of ways to help them learn. Singing, there are videos, there are audio things that help them learn their alphabet, that help them learn um, their math times tables. You can label your household items or in one room, or just have them tell you what those words mean in Spanish or English. Again, you want to have that structured, designated homework time. You want to watch, now that we have so much available to us, we didn't have any of this when my kids were little, like really good high quality Netflix shows for children in another language. Videos on YouTube are wonderful. And those are things, if you allow your kids to watch TV, then you choose, and you kind of have a certain number that they need every day, or every week rather, to support them. Kindle Fire has excellent Spanish stories, and Kindle tablets aren't as expensive as iPads, and that's another way for you to get Spanish stories. And you want to make connections with other families to share resources. So that's it. I know it's a lot. I know I talked as fast as I could to try to get so much to you. And I always welcome you to contact me here at HDLA or any of our staff here. You can always find somebody that can answer your questions. We would love to meet you. We hope that you're going to be a part of our community soon. If you're not already here, can't wait to hug you when you get back. When we all get back, we're allowed to hug. But thank you so much for spending this hour on this evening with me. And I really look forward to seeing your children grow up with us here at HDLA and be successful in 2 languages. I appreciate you and your time. Take care, everyone. Good night.